Is there a written copy?
So good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming tonight. This is a very special evening. It is a solemn night and solemn time of the season after Passover. I'm from North Asia, so it's a good evening. So just a very quick announcement. Just to let you know, on the side table over here behind the choir, we do have yard side candles for Shoah that you're welcome to take home with you for any type of donation that you like. There's a welcome box like this. Please feel free to donate whatever you are able. A couple other announcements went through that we have our upcoming program with Rabbi Donlin and Shelley Wazir on retirement in a meaningful way. So you can still sign up for the class online. We do strongly encourage you to do so. Some of you are kind of getting into that parlay to the career. Not fun. And finally, I think also very important, our HEA blood drive is going to be taking place on May 18th. We had a full group of people who signed up for it last time in December. Our next one's in about 3 weeks. So if you'd like later this evening to please sign up online. Online there's flyers, or you can actually sign up today and go into the database and sign up on the sheet for that as well. Other than that is my pleasure to introduce our senior rabbi, Rabbi Solomon. Thank you, Maureen. I want to thank Maureen and to share it as well for having me put together this program tonight. And people think us many times tonight, but we want to thank you for sharing your time and your story. The book of Proverbs, Mishlei, says that Nishmat, or Ner Adonai Nishmat Adam, God's flame is the human soul. Oh, yes.
That God's flame, oh my God, is the human soul. It's a common symbol that a flame, especially a little flame of a candle, is a representation of a human soul, and that's why we light candles in memory of loved ones who have left us. And in particular, these yellow Yortzeit candles are really common for remembering the Shoah, which we will this week on Yom HaShoah on Thursday. So I'm going to invite us to begin this evening with a little bit of ritual, to ask us to rise as we do when we remember loved ones and when we invoke God. And we'll begin by lighting this Yortzeit candle and reciting a prayer for the 6 million souls lost in the Shoah. אל מלא רחמים שוכן במרומים, המצא מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה, במעלות קדושים וטהורים כזוהר רקיע מזהירים, לנשמות כל אחינו בני ישראל שנטבחו בשואה, אנשים, נשים וטף, שנחנקו ושנשרפו ושנהרגו, שמסרו את נפשם על קידוש השם, בגן עדן תהי מנוחתם, אנא בעל הרחמים הסתירם בסתר כנפיך לעולמים, וצרור בצרחים את נשמותיהם, אדוני ונחלתם וינוח בשלום על משכבותיכם ונאמר אמן. Exalted, compassionate God, grant perfect peace in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure, whose radiance is like the heavens, to the souls of all the men, women, and children of the house of Israel, who were slaughtered, strangled, and burned in the Shoah. May they rest in paradise. Master of mercy, may they find eternal shelter beneath your sheltering wings, and may their souls be bound up in the bond of life. Adonai is their portion. May they rest in peace, and let us say, Amen. Amen. I'll invite you to have a seat as we open our program this evening with music by the Colorado Hebrew Chorale. And without further ado.
Good evening, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Carol Kozak Ward. For the past 29 years, I've been honored to be the director of the Colorado Hebrew Chorale, and tonight represents the first time since COVID that we have offered a live program in Denver. We've visited the virtual world, as have many of you. But since 2003, with only the COVID years off, the Colorado Hebrew Chorale has been honored to take part in community remembrances, and of course, there would be no community, frankly, without Ozzy or Selma in terms of sharing the message of not merely the Holocaust, but all of the many lessons to be learned. So for those of you who have not had an opportunity to hear Ozzy's presentation, I guarantee you will find yourself changed after that. We will not be sharing any of the so-called traditional Yiddish Holocaust Remembrance songs, in part because we worked most recently on a program related to the music of Louis Lewandowski, whose the bicentennial of his birth was last year in 2021. Lewandowski was basically a poor boy from Poland who got extremely lucky. Talent was not enough, and he found himself first the choir director, and frankly then the game changer for all of synagogue music. Many of those melodies will be very familiar to you, but you don't have to sing along with us tonight. The one we're sharing is Enosh, which is setting of Psalm 103, lines 15 through 17. Some of you may recall, surely our days are numbered like grass that sprouts up and withers. Though humanity may flourish now, it will vanish. But dimly remembered through the mist of time, God's eternal love for all those who revere him shall never die. The words of Enosh, a moving reflection contrasting the brevity of human life with the eternity of God's love, is part of the traditional memorial service. After we conclude, I ask that there be no applause in remembrance of our brothers and sisters who passed during the Shoah.
I want to thank the Colorado Hebrew Chorale and Carol Kozak Ward conducting today. Thank you. The psalm that the chorale sang, the verse from Psalms says that a person's life is like grass that grows in the field and it withers and dies and no one knows where it was. But that's not entirely true, or at least it's only true if we let it be true, right? That a person's life, when their life ends, no one knows of them. That's only true if they're forgotten, right? But in our tradition, we remember our past, remember our ancestors. We lay markers and monuments to remember their life. And it's gratifying this evening to see some children among this group because, your parents and your grandparents grew up knowing Holocaust survivors in our own families, in our communities. But I would say that your children will not know a Holocaust survivor personally. And it will be up to you as the last generation to be a link with the generation of the Shoah, to tell of your grandparents and great-grandparents and their peers who fled Europe or survived the Shoah as Ossie Sladek did. And today, in 2022, the survivors that are left are those that were children during the Shoah. And it's particularly special then for Ossie to connect with the children of our community, as he has so many times sharing his story with schools and with groups. And so it's really a privilege to be here tonight with you, to hear your story. Some of us have heard and will hear it and hear it again, and we all commit by our presence here to continue to share your story along with all those who survived and perished in the Shoah. So Ossie, thank you for being here tonight. Let's check that your mic is on. Yes.
Am I on?
Yes, you're on now.
Hello, shalom, good evening to all of you. Tonight is different because I know so many of you. Feels like my living room, But I'll do my best to share with you something I have done many times. And thank you, sir. Thank you, Marty, for inviting me and having these people, nice people, come and join us and so on. And I'm going to expose my face now. That's a Shune Punim. Okay, thank you. Rabbi, thank you. This is probably the second time that I'm speaking to adults in this wonderful synagogue here. I have spoken to teenagers a few times in school, but it's a special evening that I'm able to share my story with many people who came out tonight, giving up their television viewing and all kind of other things. And I'm going to ask Morty to show us. First of all, I want to introduce you to my family and some geography also. So go ahead. Okay, that's a good question. Thank you very much. Ask questions, that's the whole idea. My original name when I was born was Staub. My family's name was Staub. My father's and my mother's family was Grunfeld. Okay? There are Greenfields and Grunfelds in the United States, so who knows, some of them may be related to me. So that's what it is. Right after the war ended, my father's family wanted to get rid of any Germanic past they had. And not only Jewish people did it, but non-Jewish people did the same thing. Those who had Germanic name, they changed it to Czechoslovakian names. Okay. So Sladek is a Czech name. If you go to Prague, you probably open the phone book there, you'll see a lot of Sladeks. But I'm not in Prague, so I'm here. Go next one. Okay. Go back to Czechoslovakia. All right. I will tell you a little bit about the country where I was born. And this is Slovakia, the Slovak Republic. Those of you who know a little bit of history, Slovakia was part of Czechoslovakia, where I was born in 1935. Wonderful country with a wonderful president. He was a professor and a Democrat inside and outside. And so my family enjoyed living in a totally democratic country, and so that's where I was born. I was born in this city here called Prešov, right here, not far from Ukraine. So many of us in those days, if they wanted to go to Ukraine, they just had to drive a few hours and cross the border, and that's where we were. This line, this broken line that you see here, was created by the Nazi government because the Nazis, before they started World War II, they made all kinds of deals with the governments in Europe. And some governments decided to be very loyal allies of Nazi Germany, and some governments were not so sure about it. But my government, the Slovak government, who separated themselves from the Czech government up here, they became allies, and of course part of the deal was the Nazis needed the Jews from Slovakia, and the Slovaks promised the Nazis that they were going to resettle the Jews from Slovakia to Germany. So that's a little bit of history, okay? So the other thing was that then they gave a part of Slovakia to Hungary, and here's Hungary down here. Now this city here, which used to be a Slovak city by the name of Košice, it used to be here, and now it became a Hungarian city because they were below this line, the new border of Slovakia. And my story will be in this area here, and I want to just share with you that it's not a story that takes place in the same location. My story is from A to Z, which means when I say start my story, I just have to keep going to let you know the whole schmear, you know, what happened and so on. So I also won't be upset if you need to leave earlier. Just please leave, but let me continue saying my story. I have done this now for hundreds of times, okay? And so I'm actually talking about what I survived and what I experienced as a kid, okay? I also want to welcome my co-writer of my book, Corrine Brown. She's here. I don't think she's ever heard me speak about this story, even though she wrote the book, see? But here she is. Corrine, raise your hand so everybody can see you, okay? And my dear wife, who's back there at the table, she came with me. She comes with me practically every time wherever I go. Now, this is a family to me here, okay? Family. I want you to know that a month ago, I talked to at CSU in Fort Collins. There were 1,200 people there. So to me, this is a family today, okay? And I'll behave that way. Go ahead, let's see. I want to introduce some of my family. These are my grandparents, Jacob and Henrietta. Staub. Okay. You look at them, they were both in their late 60s, early 70s. They went to live in an old folks' home right when the Slovak government began picking up Jewish people in cities, in our city, because they wanted to save themselves. Well, unfortunately, at one point, the government picked up the whole senior facility, and everybody was shipped straight to Auschwitz. They unfortunately passed away in October of 1944. They were murdered, and I never seen them since then. Okay? Go on. My parents, my dear mother, Irene, and my father, Fred, without their courage, without their foresight, without their stubbornness, I wouldn't be here talking to you. As you know, or maybe you don't know, as in most Jewish cities and Jewish communities in Europe, when the Nazis began with their anti-Jewish programs, everything was like, and I remember hearing it as a kid, okay? Everything was, let's just settle down and tighten our belts and not, you know, let's not mix the ball too much because this will pass, okay? This is a temporary type of thing. That was probably the most tragic time for Jewish people in Europe. Doing what Jews did always in history, okay? Things will pass. God will help us. And all of these things, and I remember that because I was there. So unfortunately, that's not how it works. My mom was a wonderful person, very friendly person. She came from another town. My father was a musician, a composer, a conductor, very well known in Prešov, the town where we lived. Thank God they were together through the whole length of our experience, and the three of us survived and saved ourselves. And as I said, I was saved. And by what they did to save me, they saved themselves. And you'll see it in the story. Go on. This is a guy that you probably never met, right? Okay. This is me. In case you didn't know. Go on. That's my mom and I again. People say that we resemble each other, so go ahead. Okay, this is a very important photograph here. This is the Scholz family. My dear father, Alava Shalom, he went to college in our city, and in college he befriended a young man right here, okay, and they became very close friends. Now, he was Christian, and they became friends, and when things started to go bad in our community, he became the chief judge in Prešov, in our city, and my father approached him and he said, Joe, would you help us out somehow, okay? We decided that we don't want to go to anywhere. We are going to resist. So my parents became fugitives, actually, fugitives from the law, because the law said that all Jewish people had to be resettled into Germany. So he promised my father to help us. Now, going forward, now, this is him, Joseph, that's his wife, Margaret, his mother, and two kids. They were my age. And there's a Christmas tree back here, okay? So they were very religious Christians, but they were the kind of people we call the righteous Gentiles. Thank you, righteous Gentiles. And every year we used to go out over to their house, and they had a Christmas party, and I was excited because there were those lights on the Christmas tree, and as for a little boy, this was exciting, okay? And today, the only person who is alive out of this whole group is this little girl here, who lives near the Tatra Mountains, okay? The Tatra Mountains, by the way, we wrote a book, Corrine and I, titled Escaped to the Tatras. So she lives right on the foot of the Tatra Mountains. She's my age, exactly 75 years old. Okay. Anyway, and we kind of try to keep in touch. And our kids are much more in touch than I am with her. So that's the story here, and you'll hear more as we go on. Go ahead. That's me, okay? I'm 8 years old here. This was like about 2-3 days before I was picked up by a smuggler, okay, which is part of the story. And my dear mom took me out to a clothing store. She bought me brand new clothing, jacket, everything is new that you see there, because it was in March in Prešov. Slovakia has the same weather than we have here in Denver, Colorado, and Prešov was very cold and so on. So she wanted to make sure that when I am taken away and being smuggled through the Hungarian border, that I'm going to be warm enough. That's what it is. Okay, go on. Okay, I'll be talking to you about my two cousins, Rose and Judith, and these two kids here later on. But if you see the background, this was on a stage after a performance. And we'll talk about it a little later. Go ahead. Okay, back here. So we are back to it. Any questions to this point? Any questions? All right, so here's my story. What I remember is from the age of about 6, when the trouble started, the Slovak government fulfilled the promise to Hitler and his gang that they were going to pick up the Jewish people in Slovakia and ship them to Germany, supposedly to go work in factories, okay? Because I'm sure you know that Germany at this point in 1942 was already fighting in Russia, and of course Hitler in his book, Mein Kampf, he wrote out his plan, exactly what he was going to do, and of course he wanted to eliminate communism and the Jews at the same time, okay? And so the German military was fighting already in Russia, and to tell you the truth, that many of our Jewish people in my community in Prešov, they were not excited about communism either, okay? There were some Jewish people who was part of the Communist Party, but most of the Jewish people like freedom, and that's how they lived best. The Jews always had the best lives when they were in free places, free countries. We know that from history. So, what happened at the beginning of 1942, end of 1941, my grandparents, who you saw at the beginning here, they had secretly listened to a shortwave radio they had. They listened to BBC and to Berlin. BBC, of course, in English, and Berlin German. And since a young age, my parents had a store, and they went to work in their store, and I was taken care of by a German nanny that they hired. And that German nanny talked to me in German. So from a very young age, I learned German, okay? Now, when they listened, I was the only child around, okay? There were no other children. I sat with the adults, and I listened to Hitler screaming from Berlin, and every third word was Juden, 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 okay? Jews, Jews, Jews. And I felt like this guy wants me dead. He wants to come after me and kill me. That's how I felt from a young age, since I was about 6, 7 years old. So my Holocaust started early because I lived with fear. Okay? And every time, and they listened to Berlin every so often. Of course, they turned off the lights in the apartment because they didn't want anyone, the neighbors, to see, and so on and so on. And that's what I did. And then they listened also to BBC, and I didn't understand English, of course, at that age, but my uncle Theodore, who is now a doctor in Switzerland, he knew English, he studied English, and he translated the English. And that's where we got the real story. So then I went to school. Okay, I went to school and everything was fine until the day when a law came out that Jewish children can no longer go to school. And anyway, I used to get beat up after school by bullies, you know. We have bullies nowadays in school. And they started calling me, you dirty Jew, you nasty Jew, we go to Palestine, we don't want here. And there I was. I had no strength to fight against 2, 3 older kids. So that was really where it started. And on top of everything else, all of us had to wear a yellow star. It was punishable by imprisonment if you don't walk outside with a yellow star. So when I went to school, the kids already knew I was Jewish and I was different from them. And so that is where my life changed completely. Now, going forward, Jews had to move out of their apartments. No more professionals couldn't work in their professions. So basically all they did, they totally destroyed the Jewish community, both from a psychological, moral standpoint, and from a standpoint of being able to make a living. So that's what we found ourselves. Now, Prešov was a small town. It wasn't a big city, okay? I showed you before. It's right above Košice there. A total population of about 20,000 people, about 6,000 Jewish people, okay? And so, but I tell you, the relationship was wonderful. Among the people, it was wonderful. Until the day that my mom and my father, who got a special permit to work in their own store that was already taken away by a non-Jew, by going to the city hall for a $25 permit, they could come to any Jewish-owned store, walk in, and say, as of next Monday, this is my business. That's what the law, the new laws that came out. And that's how Jewish people lost their businesses. And in a city like Prešov, most of the stores were owned by Jewish people, okay? So what was happened, they totally impoverished us, and they destroyed us as a community. So I stopped going to school, and they started coming around. The government set up a paramilitary organization called Hlinka Gardists, and they put them in uniforms, young fellows, and they gave them guns, and they gave them addresses where to go to pick up Jewish families, okay? Now, of course, we had to move out of the apartment because we lived in the main street. Main street is, Jews can live in Main Street. So you can imagine what was happening to us. They were pressing more and more and more. So we moved in with my grandparents and lived with them. They traded their apartment with their like a maid who lived in a little building, and we had to move in there, and that was our hiding place, actually. So what was going on is that we had to live in such way that, number one, that nobody, the people, the Hlinka Gardis and the government, the city government, wouldn't know where we were. Okay, we had to hide the whole time. And I'm not going to be able to tell you all the details because I could see this guy looking at his watch already. So I know what's going on. Oh, okay. So what was going on is that everything changed. I mean, it was constant fear because we were all terrorized, okay? And we didn't know what was happening from one day to the next. Now, jumping forward, my parents received a special permit to work in their store that was taken away, okay? Because they were needed because of their expertise, and the store was a very, very well-known store because they carried some of the nicest and best merchandise on the city. Like, where do you think that the best merchandise came from in those days? What country? What country do you think? Germany, right. Germany was America of now, right? All the good things came from Germany. So my parents carried German merchandise or Italian. That was the source of it. So, and now here I am. I'm now 7 years old, and I loved toys. I played with toys. I didn't have brothers, sisters, but I had a lot of toys because my parents sold toys also. So I used to go in and sit in the store on the floor, play with the stores. I used to wind them up and they would jump and do all kind of tricks, you know. And one day, a German soldier walked into the store. Now, mind you, there was no German military in Slovakia because that was part of the arrangement. You give us the Jews, we will keep our military out of your country. That was the arrangement between the two countries. A German soldier, I didn't pay attention to it, okay? And I was playing with my toys down on the floor. And this young man was looking around, looking at merchandise, and at one point he picked up one of the little tanks, German tank, toy, looked at it, and he smiled at me and so on, and then talked to my mom, okay? And I didn't know, I didn't pay attention, okay? I was just a kid. After he left, my mom and my dad was talking to each other. My father wasn't in the store, just my mother. This young German soldier came and he bought some merchandise. He was on his way from Poland. You see, the Russian army was fighting against the German army and pushing the Germans right through Poland. This way, there was a pass called the Dukla Pass here, right here, and they were pushing them west towards Germany, okay? Now, this soldier came from Poland. He was on a leave. He was allowed to go home for Christmas. So he came down Poland, and he came through our town, and he found out that go to the Staubs, they have good merchandise. He wanted to buy something good to take to his parents to Germany. And my mom told my dad, Fritz, you won't believe what this guy told me. He told me, he asked me, is this little boy your kid? So she said, yes. He said, ma'am, of course in German, and my mom spoke German, make sure you hide this kid and yourselves, because I come from Poland, and you have no idea what's going on with the Jewish people in Poland. They are in ghettos, they are starving, they are dying, and the little kids by the thousands are dying of starvation and all kind of diseases. So take good care of your little boy. Now, what that gave us looking back, okay, he was a God-sent person. He was a young Jewish German soldier. Nobody, as my mother was scared to take care of him. She didn't know what, who he was and what he was doing. This guy spilled the beans to us. And from that day, my parents made a determination that they are going to have to somehow avoid being taken away, and we were going to have to hide and so on. So they set up a system. My father asked the Judge Schultz, when you find out, and he was a high-ranking person in the city, when you find out when the roundups are going to happen in the city, let us know, and we are going to try to hide somewhere. Sure enough, he did it. He sent his secretary secretly. And my mom, who was such a sweet, friendly person, made some friends with the regular customers. And she approached them and says, Anichka, or whatever her name was, we have a problem. We are Jewish, and now they're picking us up. Would you hide us if we needed to hide? And you know what? There were two families that said, we love you and we are going to take care of you. Okay? So now we had the information coming to us, and we had some place to go and hide. So that was the new system, the way we lived. Okay? So I remember myself many times, my mom took me by my hand after dark, and we walked to a house, and we came to the house. They shut the door fast, because if they would have been caught, they would have put them in jail, That was the law. So everything had to be done very carefully. And where would we hide? There were only two places, either the attic or underneath the house. Now, they didn't have an attic I don't know, but they chose they had like a trap door that they opened, okay? And there was a big hole there, where they kept their perishable goods during summer, or non-perishable during the winter. It was like a refrigerator nowadays, okay? That was their refrigerator under there. And they told us, get down there, okay? And just stay there, and we'll find out when the roundups are over. We'll let you know, and you'll go home to your place. And what they did, the trap door came down. They put a carpet on it, so if somebody walks in, they didn't know. We had a flashlight. That was basically it. If we had to go to the bathroom, knock 3 times or whatever, they would let us out, and that's how we were hiding, okay? Now, come beginning of 1943, by then, I would say about 80% of the Jewish families were picked up from my city and shipped already out. And by then, we knew exactly what was happening. Now let me share with you a little thing here. And I like to share these things, and especially with young teenage people, okay? So they can understand some of this minutiae, this, little things that happen, but it's very important. The beginning of 1942, our government sent an invitation over radio. Of course, we didn't have television in those days, so everything came over radio. About March of 1942, all young Jewish women between the ages of 16 and, 32, non-married women, they are needed in Germany. Our good friends, the Germans, they are manufacturing weapons because they are fighting against the Russians, and all of this wonderful stuff that they were talking about. We want you to come to the train station at a certain date and bring 2 suitcases, and we'll put you on a train and you'll go to Germany, and you'll get paid for your work. Now, what happened? A lot of the young people packed and they went, okay? There was no question, because again, our Jewish community, they were trusting. They were trusting the Germans. My own family spoke German, and they loved the German people, the German culture. They never in the I don't know what the expression is, you know, they never thought that the German people would be capable of doing what they ended doing, okay? So they believed. And 3 months later, now they call the boys, the young Jewish boys, the same thing. They packed up, they went to the train, they shipped them out to Germany. Now, here's what happened. And you know, nobody believes it, okay? Because when these young people arrived to Germany, first of all, they were slaves. As soon as they got there, they were slaves, okay? They put them to work 18-hour days, terrible food, no medical attention. They were slaves, basically. And what they did with them, they put them in a room like this. They distributed postcards to them and said, okay, here's a postcard. Send it to your parents, write to your parents and tell them how wonderful things are here. Everything is all right. We are being fed good food and all the, you know, nice things. Address it and we are going to mail it for you. The same thing with the guys, okay? And my parents had friends who, some of them, kids went to Germany like this, and they showed the postcards. Hey, look at the postcards. The kids are doing well, you know, they're happy there. So now, here's the thing. What would you do if a guy with a machine gun stands in front of you and tells you to write this postcard, okay? What would you do, okay? That's what happened. And of course, we didn't know at first. We didn't know that. That came out later, okay? So basically, the Nazis were brilliant in inventing all kind of shticks, all kind of things. They were liars, they were thieves, they did all the horrible things that any human being can do. That's who the Nazis were, okay? And we were people who trusted. That was our culture. The Bible, the Talmud, you know, that's what the Jewish people did in Europe, in my family. So, going forward to early 1943, I was now 8 years old. My mom and dad one day tell me, Asi, most of our friends have been picked up and they are gone, and we want to save you. We decided to send you to Hungary because my mom had a sister, an older sister in her family in Hungary, in this town that I showed you before, right here, this town below Prešov, called Košice. Now it was called Kassa in Hungarian, okay? Right here. So I was going to go from this town to this town. The distance was not very, very large. It took one long day, you know, like about 16 to 18 hours to walk it, okay? There were trains, of course, and buses and stuff. I couldn't go on a train. I couldn't go on a bus. I was Jewish. If somebody notices it, okay? Now, that was after March 18, that was my birthday, and I don't know what it was, 19, 20. And a stranger comes and he picks me up to take me across the border to Hungary. Now my parents hired a smuggler. There were smugglers who were, you know, this was not just Jews were being picked up and sent to concentration camps. There was a war. It was Second World War, okay? So there were all kind of businesses like this going on. So a smuggler comes in, and my parents, I don't pay him, I didn't pay attention. I was beside myself, okay? I was 8 years old, and my parents telling me, Asi, you are going to go to another country. I couldn't understand it, okay? I couldn't understand it. And he shows up, and I start crying and begging my parents, please don't send me, I don't want to go. And it didn't help, because ultimately they promised me all kinds of things, it's just for a short time, we'll get together soon. And I had to go. That was March 1943. Long day's walk. He couldn't take me into a train or a bus or anything like this. His one step was like 2 or 3 my steps, walking next to him. He was a tall guy, a big man. So I was just barely able to follow him. Long day. At night, after dark already, we came to a place, and there was a creek, frozen creek, and of course by now I was besides myself. I was so tired. Now, imagine you are a little kid, 8 years old, coming from an Orthodox family, and I was taught what to do and what to do, and if you don't do something or do something, God is going to punish you, okay? That's the upbringing, basically, in Orthodox. And my mom tells me, Asi, if anybody stops you and they ask you, what are you doing there? Where are your parents? Tell them that you're an orphan. Your parents were found, were killed by the Nazis. Just lie to them like this. Lie to them, make up a story, anything you want. And I thought, my mother is telling me to lie? Not long ago, they taught me, hey, Judaism, 10 Commandments, don't do that, and so on. Now she's telling me, lie and don't be afraid. So I was besides myself. So we get to a place, it was a meadow, green meadow covered with snow, and there was a beautiful night with a moon shining on this meadow, and it was reflecting everything, beautiful. So the guy tells me, you see those trees on the other side there? See those trees? I want you to get over there, okay? I want you to pretend you're a bunny rabbit. Hey, it was fun for me, I'm a little boy, I'm a bunny rabbit now. Get on your 4 and just pretend and just go like a bunny rabbit until you get to those trees, and I'll come and I'll pick you up from there. So for me, it was fun. So snow, pretty deep, I go bunny rabbit, and about the middle of that crossing there, I hear shootings of a gun on this side and some men yelling and talking to each other, and I lie down into the snow and I stop breathing, and my mind is telling me, this is nighttime and maybe the rabbits are out and the hunters come and they hunt the rabbits, they shoot them, see? That was what went through my head. And I was lying there for quite a while until finally those noises went away and no more shooting, no more talking, and I continued to crawl. I crawled to the other side, and I sat there for I don't know how long, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, half an hour. Finally he showed up. In the meantime, I had thoughts like, what if he just abandons me? And what do I do? This is out, in the wilderness. Finally he comes and he taps me on the head. He said, Asi, you did a good job, You're a very good rabbit, now let's continue. So we continued, and we came to a farm, and there were farmers there, and they fed me food. They told me to go to sleep because they're going to wake me up early in the morning. Sure enough, early in the morning, they wake me up, like 6 o'clock, it was still dark outside, and they gave me some food again. There's a car outside, and a little old jalopy car. They tell me to get into the car. There's a driver. He drives the car, and I sit next to him. He says, after a while, you will see the bigger houses. We are going to Košice, to the city where I was supposed to go. And I sit there, and, I was curious, and suddenly I see these big houses, so, okay. It was 7 o'clock in the morning. In a city like that, there was nobody in the streets, and he stops on the corner, right by the big church there, and he tells me, get out, stand on the corner, and your family will pick you up soon. So I said, okay, bye. He drives away. I'm standing in the corner there. I don't know how long. And I'm shaking, and I'm saying, what if my family doesn't pick me up, okay? What if they forget about it? I was standing there, and I just didn't know what was happening. After a while, there's a policeman on his beat coming towards me. And by now, I want you to understand, I was speaking 3 languages already, okay? I spoke German from my nanny. I spoke Slovakian, that I went to school already. And my parents used to speak Hungarian to each other, okay? So I knew 3 languages. This guy comes slowly to me and says to me, Kis fiúcska, that's in Hungarian, little boy, where are your parents? So I say, I don't have parents. Dawned on me, I had to lie. My mother told me, don't forget, but just make up stories. And I make up stories, okay? And I told him how I went alone after my parents were shot by the Germans and all kind of stories. So he says, come with me. He takes me to the police station. Police station, they put me in a room. There is a table, there are desks up there, and in the middle of the room they put a chair, right, like this one, and another chair next to it, and they put a pail of water and a towel over the chair. And God, I remember seeing American movies. My father used to take me to see American movies when they had an interrogation scene, right? That's what they did. They put, pail of water, and I'm sitting and shaking, and I'm wondering, what's going to happen to me? After a while, a little pudgy guy, an officer, a Hungarian officer, comes in, sits behind his desk, takes out his revolver, putting it on his desk, and starts talking now. Kis fiúcska, mi a neved? Now, little boy, what's your name? And where do you come from? And all of these questions. And I am shaking, and I'm giving these all kind of scenes to him, all kind of lies, and and I was so scared. But you know what I was scared of? I was scared of God. I was waiting for to hit me from the top. Because, I was taught from a young age, never lie, okay? And here I was lying. Well, anyway, to make a long story short, they interrogated me there all day. I was at the police station, and then there was also a detective who took me in his car, drove me around the city, showed me which way you came from. Are you sure nobody helped you? And they were trying to find, they knew I couldn't do that. I was a little boy, but who did they want to catch? Something illegal went on there, right? They wanted to catch the smugglers. They made a lot of money, and they caused a lot of problems, okay? So at the end of the day, finally, he asked me, what's the name of your family? I said, the family's name is Singer. He gets on the phone, he dials like this, You remember? And he says to me after a while, okay, young boy, they're going to be here in half an hour to pick you up. Oh, God, So half an hour later, my family came, and they had to sign all kind of papers. And since I was an orphan, they had to, what do you call it when you, not bribe, but I became an owner, their child. Adopt. Right on the spot, they had to sign adaptation papers. Now here I am, okay, Oscar Staub, now I am Oscar Singer. My last name changed. All right, I went with the family, okay. Now, can you show that picture there? Keep going, keep going. Can you go? Go backwards now. Go backwards. That's me and my little sister. I'll tell you about it. See this picture here? Okay? Stay on this picture. That family I was going to, Judy and those were my cousins, okay? My cousins. Wonderful people. They took good care of me. They fed me. They were so nice to me. And these two, they were very musical, the two of them. She plays the piano, she sings, and I loved music. because my father taught me all kinds of things about music. One of the things I knew how to tap dance at a very young age, okay? I saw Fred Astaire in the early movies, you know, so I learned how to tap dance and I sang and so on and so on. So that was after a performance. They slept me every second weekend. There were Jewish organizations, and I had to dance and sing, and this was my partner here, see, this guy? And of course I ask, which one is me? This one or this one? And of course, when I'm with the younger people, hey, one of the kids, hey, which one is me? You tell me. What is that one? Left or right?
No, for the right, yeah.
This one?
That way.
Yeah. Okay, so who is this?
I don't know.
Your cousin.
My cousin? My cousin, okay. My cousin's name is Oscar Singer. Well, you know, it was a show, right? So they dressed me as a girl. Why? Because I had a high voice. And this was a girl who had a low voice. So when we sang duets, okay, it worked out very nicely. So that's what they did. Anyway, I had a wonderful time. I loved it. The only problem was that every night before I fell asleep, I was crying. I missed my parents, okay? So that's part, we are at the middle part of my story now. Take a deep breath, and I'll continue. Yes?
So at the very beginning, you mentioned that the president of your country, of Slovakia, was good, he was educated, he was good to people, but then...
No. See, in 1938, there were elections. And unfortunately, the Democrats got beaten. And the new president was a priest. He was a priest. And we ended up being a fascist government. So they negotiated with Germany, and that was the end of them, okay? Yeah, so the new government was a fascist government. Unfortunately, the president of Czechoslovakia, what it used to be, he died in 1937. So the good times and democracy was gone completely. Okay, well, a good question. Thank you. Thank you for the question. March 1944, if you open any kind of a history book, that was the day when the Nazi army invaded Hungary, and they came into Hungary. I was in school. I heard about it on the radio in the morning. I faked in the school. I lied to the teacher. I was not feeling good. I went out, and I wanted to see that place, that big circle, what do you call it, where the people gathered, and I saw how the Nazi army came in to my city where I lived there. And it was a terribly scary thing for me, because the whole time I was there, the Hungarian Jews were protected by their government, okay? His name was Horthy Miklós, was the name of the president of Hungary, and Horthy Miklós was able to work out a deal with Adolf Hitler that don't touch our Jews, because we like our Jews and they're important for our what do you call it? For the economy, thank you, important for our economy. And he managed to hold back Hitler, okay? So that the Jews were free. And again, so that day I sat down for dinner with my family, and I told him, family, did you know that the Nazi army came in today? They said, oh, we heard it on the radio. I said, aren't you concerned? No, I mean, why should we be concerned? I said, are you sure you're not concerned? You're just a little boy, eat your soup. That was the answer. So I kept my mouth shut, but you know what's going on inside me? I knew this was bad news, okay? So from that moment on, I told my aunt and uncle, I want to go back to my parents, to Slovakia. And I got from time to time messages, you know, from my parents, we are still okay, and be well, and hopefully we'll see you. I didn't want to stay there because I knew what was going to happen, okay?
How old were you at that point?
I was 9 years old. 9 years old, yeah. But I had something here that kind of led me, you know. It's not all from here, you know, from the neshama, you know. Kishkes, the neshama, you know. There's something going on in me. So I followed these instincts in me, and it told me, get back to your parents. And finally, the next month in April, another smuggler shows up, and he says, your parents sent to pick up Osika and taking him back to Prešov. I went back to Prešov. This time, instead of being a bunny going through snow at night, they took me we were walking again, but this time there was no snow, there was terrible rain, and they took me to a farm, and as I walk in with them, there's a big hay wagon standing out in the farm, and I start running. I say, I want to get up there, right? You know, hay wagon, and you go up on top. And the guy yells at me, no, wait a minute, you are going to go under the hay, okay? So I said, what do you mean under the hay? So what they did, they dug a hole into the hay, okay? And they made me crawl in there and make room for myself. And then they closed the hole with the hay. And I was lying on my stomach, and there was all of this hay above me, okay? So the wagon started moving. There were two horses, you know, hitched to a wagon. And it was going and going and going. And finally, at one point, the wagon stops, and I can hear German conversation, a man speaking German. So I figured my mind was telling me, this probably is the border, okay, the border. And there are German border patrols. And I thought they were undo the hay, they are going to get the hay off the wagon, they're going to find a little Jewish boy lying on his stomach. What do you think they did? Instead of doing that, they had rifles with them. They put bayonets on the rifles. They were poking into the hay. And I tell you, I could feel right in front of my face, on this side, by my buttock or whatever, moving the hay with me. And luckily enough, instead of unloading the hay, they didn't find me, okay? Didn't find me. If they would have poked into my rib or whatever, I would have screamed, okay? And then the wagon started going, and after a while, he took me out from there, and he put me on a train. I had no idea where I was. Put me on the train, and he says, we'll soon be in Prešov, and anyway, a lot of details, which I'm gonna skip. And in Prešov, I got to my parents, and of course, kissy and hugging and all of that stuff. So I was back with my parents. As soon as I got there, they let me know that now we are going to live as Christians. How? They found an organization, underground organization. They produced falsified baptismal birth certificates, okay? Again, for money, you can buy a lot of things in a war, okay? And from now on, my name was going to be Ondrej Šťamba. That was a typical Slovak name. Ondrej Šťamba. And don't make a mistake, Ossi, because if you tell your name like Oskar Staub, you are going to, give us away. So Ondrej Šťamba, okay. Ondrej Šťamba. We had to leave our town because practically all the Jews were gone already. And we had to go to another city called Mikuláš. And do you want to go to the map so I can show you? Okay. So I went, my route was from Prešov to Košice or Kaša. I lived here a year. back to Prešov, across the border. This is the border. And now they were going to take a cab and go to this city right here, Liptovsky Mikuláš, which is right on the edge of these beautiful Tatra mountains here. Beautiful mountains. So what they were thinking that is everything fails, we are going to have to go to the mountains, okay? And to skip a few details are not so important, but we were able to ultimately go to the mountains. And in the mountains, we lived with other Jewish people already who also escaped. There were some cabins that were left in the winter time, were abandoned by shepherds who owned those cabins. And the people who showed us the way to the mountains, after we lived in a little village, told us, always look for a cabin that has an open door, and just move in there, and that's it. So the last part of my story is that the first couple of nights we slept out in the mountains in the snow. I mean, now here I'll tell you something now. And my wife is going to be okay with me now. Because what I say, you know, and I'll try to be truthful, okay? I tell the truth. Jews don't camp. Did you know that? And it's true, you know. I got 1,200 people to laugh when I said it at CSU. And most of them were not Jewish, okay? So, and Jews don't hunt, for that matter, okay? So that's a reality. That's part of our culture, okay? We were, as a kid, my father never took me to the hills, you know, and showed me how to sleep at night, you know, under a tent, stuff like that. I didn't know anything from that. So what happened? We went up there. We had no idea how to survive in mountains. No idea. So we had some backpacks, a couple of blankets, and salami. Okay, it's a good food to be with you to have. And there were no canned goods in those days in Slovakia. I mean, you know, so that kind of food we took up. And we lived there in a shack there with other Jewish people. I'm going to skip forward. Time is running, and this is December 1944, Christmas Day, mind you. I'll never forget, Christmas Day. Nearby, there used to be a group of partisans who lived in the mountains. Okay. I hope you know what partisans were. Who were the partisans? Anybody who would like to know and doesn't know yet? Tell me. Yes. Partisans were young men and some women who, instead of fighting with the armies, they volunteered to be trained to fight the Nazis from behind the lines. Okay? The Nazis call them, what do they call them? What's the word? That's okay. They were not traitors, but
vigilante type.
yeah. Well, they were. You know, there's another word. Starts with a T. Terrorists. The Nazis called them terrorists because they used to blow up trains and do things like that. And so there was a group of them living, you know, like we were here, right? And they lived just like half a mile above us. And they used to come and visit us and so on and so on. And I have a lot of stories to tell with that. You know, and that could be a story by itself. But it was very nice because we felt good. They were armed. They have rifles. They have a machine gun. They have all the weapons. So it made us feel good. And on Christmas Day, one of them comes down on skis and says, hey, disperse all of you, because from up there we could see Nazi soldiers are coming up to the mountains, okay? So there was little you know, are you going? I'm not going. We are going. My parents and I packed up the backpacks, and there was a young Polish family, a young father, mother, and a little girl, 4-year-old girl. Now I was 7 years old now. I didn't play with 4-year-old girls, so you know I had no interest in her. But and they 3 people and we 3 people, we packed up and we left, and the rest stayed in the cabin. Okay? Oh, it's late in the day. That was noon, Christmas Day. Oh, it's late in the day. It's going to get dark real soon. By the time they're not going to come all the way up here. Okay? So we went, and as we walked further up into the mountains, we found a cave. There was a little cave in a big rock, and my parents say, Asi, they always made me check out things because I was little and quick on my feet. Check it out. So I climb in there, and I look around, and I say, well, there's room for people to sit down here and just sit and see what happens. So they all came in. They had to get down on their knees, and you know, it was hard for adults. The opening was small. And I was the last one to get in. Now, when we were in the city, before we went to the mountains, I asked my father, Dad, Daddy, please, I need a weapon, Daddy. I need a weapon. So my dad said, you're just a little boy. What do you need a weapon for? Huh? He says, Dad, give me a weapon. I want to feel good, okay? You have to remember, I got beat up many times by shkeitzim, they call it, right? And if I had a weapon, I could have maybe fight back. So my father came in with me. It was like an Ace Hardware store, okay? And I asked for a weapon. So they showed me a hatchet, okay? A hatchet, you know, it's like an axe, two-sided with a handle. I said, that's it, I need that. So I carried a hatchet in my belt the whole time we were up in the mountains. And I did all kinds of things. And but I'm not going to tell you all these things. Too long. I'm going to advertise now my new book, okay? If you want to find out all the details, my dear wife Selma told me, Asi, bring a few books. So I brought a few books. So if you're really interested in all the details, on your way out, you might, you know. Okay, what it is, we went, and I was the last one to go into the cave, and I decided if I cut down a couple of branches, the trees, the same kind of trees that grow here, pine trees, right, pine trees. If I cut down a couple branches, and I get in the last one, you know, with my tush into the opening, and I lean those branches that looked like, from the outside, like there were just a couple of branches against the opening, okay? So that's what I did, and we waited to see what happens. All of us sitting there holding hands, my mom, my dad, the others, the Polish family, and so on. And at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, all of a sudden, shooting and yelling, "Raus Juden! Raus Juden!" In German, it means, Jews, get out! Raus Juden! And then we hear young voices. There were a couple of mothers with young children. Nicht schießen bitte, kleine Kinder here. Please do not shoot, there are little children here. And all of this terrible thing going on there. And we were sure that the Nazis were killing, that the soldiers were killing our friends, you know, that we live with them now several weeks already. And so that was it. After a while, smoke. We smelled smoke. And then it went away. And after a while, we can hear, in the snow, boots, okay, boots. And I'm kind of peeping through those branches, and I can see the Nazi soldiers walking back and forth, looking for more people, for Jews, you know, who were hiding, or partisans or whatever. They didn't find us. they walked away. And that was the last time that I came and my parents came this close to be picked up and sent to a concentration camp. So this was the last time. Because afterwards, the next day, we went out and the smoke that we smelled, they burned down the cabin. They burned down the cabin. Nobody was killed there or anything. And all that was in that cabin is a little potbelly stove. It wasn't like in Vale, it's not that kind of a cabin. The herdsmen, they used those cabins, and so we picked up not me, the adults, picked up this potbelly stove, schlepped it all the way up to near the place where we were hiding, and we picked up whatever we could. Some miraculous way, there was a roll of tar paper under the snow that I never saw before. You know what tar paper is, right? That's what they put on top of the houses before they put the shingles. Now the kids think that the shingles is what keeps the house from being inundated by rain. So I have to tell them, no, there is something called tar paper. Anyway, so we slept all of that stuff. Of course, I helped as much as I could, and we built a little lean-to for ourselves. I used my hatchet to cut off a little thicker branches, stronger branches. We had some twine with us, and we had that what do you call it? The roll of tar paper, just enough that we can build a little closed place for ourselves. And that's where we actually stayed to the very end. And it was winter, okay? We were there from December through March, about March 3rd or 4th. And what happened in the meantime, we almost perished from lack of food. We had enough water because we were up in the mountains and there was snow, a lot of snow. And my mom was just very careful with salami, very thin pieces of salami. Everybody was, and other things that she had, beans and peas and stuff like that. She made soups, but it was very, very difficult, okay? So now it's beginning of March, and one morning one of the partisans on skis comes and says, hey guys, we the partisans decided to get off the mountain. Why? Because, see, the Russian army was pushing the German armies through here, as I showed you before, through the valley here, right under the mountains here, but the front stopped here, right here, stopped for 2 months, and it didn't move in any direction. And there we were up in the mountains, and at night we saw the cannonballs flying in the air, and this beautiful, 4th of July display up there, and we are stuck here, and we have no food, and it was very difficult. So next, they said to us, the young man, the partisans, we decided that we are going to get off the mountain here, going to cut through here, down to this side. There are no more Nazi military here, because they were already on this side. They knew how to do it, how to go down. If you want, we'll take you with us. If you're not ready, 6 o'clock in the morning, like next Wednesday or whatever, we are going to go without you. So that's what happened. They came, everybody, 6 in the morning, leave everything here. What do we leave? What do we have here? I mean, leave everything here. We had schmattes on us, and we were skinny like, I don't know. So we lined up and we followed them down from 6 o'clock in the morning to about 8 o'clock at night. They knew the route, how to go down. as a kid, I was just so frustrated because we walked at the edge of the front, you know, where the fighting was going. And of course, there were cannonballs that were they're flying the wrong directions, and every so often they blew up around us. Now lie down, now stand up, now lie down, and, you know, the whole time. And there was pistols and grenades and stuff like that. I was dying to go over and take them, to have them with me, you know. I wanted to have ammunition with me, after all, you know. And my parents yelled at me, "Don't you dare." So that was the end of living in the mountains. After dark, we came to a place, all of a sudden we hear, "Postoi! Postoi!" A couple of men jumped out from behind the trees. Postoi in Russian means stop, okay? Stop. Postoi, and of course, they stopped. The Russians told the partisans to put down their weapons, and they asked who we were. We were Yevreis. Yevrei in Russian is Jews. Yevrei. Oh, хорошо. Everything is fine. And they led us into a little village that was already liberated from the Nazis, from the Slovak gangsters. Yes?
At this time, were you still saying that you were Christians, or was that just temporarily before?
That was temporary before, yes. Yeah. Temporary before. And that's basically how we were liberated. And then, of course, they fed us food, and that was the end of my how shall I put it? The end of my childhood, exactly. I was not a child anymore, you're very right. I was already an adult in a child's body, because I learned so much and I heard so much that, you know. So that was the end. So, have you had any questions? Ask me. Anything, yes.
So, after you got liberated, how long did you live in Europe before you came?
Well, we went back to our town, you know, Prešov, again, Prešov. We made our way to Prešov. And I tell you, the Holocaust didn't end right then when the war ended. As a matter of fact, the Holocaust never ended for me. The Holocaust is still with me, okay? And with others who survived. Because you can't forget it, there's no way, you know. It's embedded in us. And so it took, well, I lived in Czechoslovakia. It became Czechoslovakia after the war. I was there till 1948. 1948, I got a gift. There's a picture, me and a little baby. My mother gave birth to a baby sister, and it was 1948. I had my bar mitzvah in 1948. Very sad one. Rabbi, you probably would like to hear about it. All the people who were there, most of them lost their children in the war. Now they came to a bar mitzvah, so you can imagine what was going on there. I was trying to do my parasha, my part, and they were sitting and crying there. So I couldn't know what I should do. Should I cry with them, or or what, you know? That was my bar mitzvah. And after Israel became a country in 48, I didn't want to keep living in Prešov anymore. I went to a youth group called Mizrahi. It was a youth group, and I started learning Hebrew and Israeli songs and stuff like that. In 49, my parents, who wanted to go to South America, changed their plans because I told them, you go to America, I'm going to Israel, okay? Just like that, I was 14 years old. And I meant it, and I could have done it. Legally, you had to be 16 years old for a boy. But I figured I'm going to fake it, and I'll get to Israel. So they changed their minds. They came with me, and I was in Israel 8 years. And my life was returned to me when I arrived to Israel. You know, and that was it. Yes?
How many languages do you speak?
7.
My father spoke all the languages.
Did he?
And all my family perished in the Holocaust.
They did.
They were in Poland, and the only people that were alive that were saved was my father and mother, who were dropped off in Mexico City, and everybody else perished. I never knew brothers, uncle, nothing.
And you were young.
No, I was born later on. I was born a year after you.
Oh, wow. So you're just a child. So you're talking to an old man then. Okay. Anyway, any other questions? Yes?
How'd you end up here in Colorado?
The what?
How'd you end up here in Denver?
Oh, that's a long story. Let me tell this. My wife is here. She would tell you that better than I. I came here to study to California, which is a long story also. California, I studied, and not only that, but I was a musician, okay? In Israel, I spent my time in the army playing and singing with the military. That was my job. And I came to LA, so they were in LA. That was folk music era, okay? 56, 57, 58. And I loved it, okay? I used to be on stage with people like Josh White and Odetta and all of those old-time singers and musicians, and I loved it, okay? What can I tell you? I used to perform for Jewish organizations in LA, in all of Southern California. And one day, a young lady calls me on the phone, who was the secretary for Jewish National Fund in Los Angeles. And she says to me, Asi, a cousin of mine is coming in next weekend from Denver, Colorado. I never knew what Denver was, never heard of it. And would you do me a favor, take her out for a blind date? I can't say no, because she used to give me jobs, okay? So I said, okay, I'll do it. I'll do you a favor. Comes the next weekend, you know. So I had to go to that girl's family house, and I was going to meet this young lady, right? And I thinking, what am I going to do with a blind woman? Okay, I mean, you know. And all of a sudden, she comes in, and I say, where's the white stick? I mean, you know. And she shows up, and gorgeous. I mean, you know. And that's how we met, actually, my wife and I, in LA, 1959. What do you call it? 59. First day of the year. What's it?
Oh, New Year's Day.
New Year's Day. Thank you. Thank you. You had a question, somebody. Yes?
So when you went back to your town after the war, what was it called? Letstow? When you got back there, what was the mood of the community? Like, the non-Jews that were there, they acknowledged what occurred in the community, and how did they think about the fact that all these Jews who had been in their midst had suddenly disappeared?
Well, I tell you, they were still very strongly anti-Semitic. The war didn't touch them much, okay? Basically, the Christian community in Europe, they were anti-Jewish, anti-Semitic, and in most cases they were happy to see the Jews being taken away. That's the story, you know, and it can be proven. It's been proven many times. There are a few people who were honest, just like the ones who took us in and hid us, and the judge who was willing to risk his family to send us messages, because they would have found the the secretary and the note from the judge. You know, they risked their families, okay? But I tell you one thing, I wanted out of there, okay? My parents wanted out of there. They got their store back, okay, but life was not the same anymore. What do you think, how many Jews came back after the war? I told you that originally there were 6,000 Jews. There were about 250 Jews came back, okay? That's all.
Just in your town.
Yeah, my town, yeah. So you know, all the friends and family, unfortunately, I lost half of, excuse me, I lost half of my family. Half of my family, basically all of my friends and cousins, they're all dead. They all went. Yes. Yes, honey.
What would you say was the scariest thing for you in the Holocaust?
The scariest thing, every day was scary, honey. Every day. When I woke up, I didn't know what's going to happen this day, okay? I didn't know. You know, if you sleep in a makeshift little place, you know, you freeze, my feet were freezing. I didn't know from one day to the other what's going to happen. That's what it was. That's how I lived, okay? Every day was a miracle if you survived without being picked up and taken away, you know. That's how it was. Yes?
You live in fear all your life.
Yes, yes.
That's what happened.
Yes, that's right. Yes. Anybody else? Rabbi, do you have a question for me?
Well, I was curious to know a little bit more about what you did in the years after.
Let me tell you something before. I think you'll probably appreciate it. In those backpacks, you know, as I told you, what was in there? There were Shabbat candles, okay? My father's siddur, okay? Even his tefillin was there. And people can't understand it, you know. You are running for your lives. Why would you do that, okay? And I try to explain to non-Jewish people that that's how we lived, okay? That was our lives. We never gave up hope as Jews, okay? And it was wonderful, but it was a tragic ending for us because, you know, we were not willing to give up our belief. I was not happy when I had to say my name was Ondrej Jamba, okay? I was not happy about it. As a kid, it was terrible, you know. And we lived with, you know, in a town that I didn't tell you about, that Mikuláš we lived. We had to find a place to live, okay? Now we had the papers, okay? And the only place we found to live was a Christian minister and his wife. They were renting out a room. The whole town, the taxi cab took us around town, and the only sign for rent was in this place. So we walked up and we said, you know, we are Christians and we would like to rent a room. And we rented a room. But what happened? Come Friday night, my mother wants to light the candles, my father wants to say the Kiddush, and you know, all of this kind of stuff. So how did this happen? You know. That's how it happened. And that's how we survived, yes.
So when did your parents pass away?
They passed away very young, unfortunately. And fortunately, they are buried in Denver. Okay, yes. Yes, yes,
A couple more questions.
yes.
Where's your sister now?
In Toronto, Canada. Yes.
How did she end up there?
How did she end up there? Well, look, my sister and I are two different worlds, okay? She was born in 1948, so she has absolutely no real understanding for what her brother, me, and her parents, of course, what we lived through. Years went by, she never asked, you know, what happened, and I don't know why, but she just lived in a different world, you know. It wasn't her world. Yeah, she, you know, yes,
Do you have any children?
yes. Yes, you want to know how many?
Yes.
4 children. 6 grandchildren, 7 grandchildren, 2 great-grandchildren.
The same as me,
You?
exactly the same.
So we are the same age? That's good. You have a question? Yes?
And your experience in LA is why your son's in LA now.
My son is in LA because since he was 13 years old, he told mom and dad, I'm going to move to LA. And he finished high school. He was gone, okay? And he's still there.
And is he still directing movies?
He made a few movies, yes. And actually, he helped put together my book, and he's make sure that it was properly done and so on and so on. So, anything else? Anybody? It's getting late.
Any questions from our young people?
Yeah. Yeah, this young lady asked a few questions already. Very nice.
It's really important for our young folks if they have, don't put them on the spot, but don't be shy if you want to know.
Hold on a second. Is that a young person there? No. Yes, you have a question.
Mazel tov for your wonderful life.
Thank you, my dear.
Telling us the stories,
Thank you.
and we're very, very proud of you.
Well, I can tell you the same thing. You live through hard times the same. So, thank you. Thank you for being here. And that's it.
So I want to thank Ossie. I know 2 of his sons, his son Ron and I are about the same age. We went to IST together in Israel, and we were in AZA together. And his younger son Dan was Dan and your husband. We were in AZA together. I was their counselor in AZA. So when Dan was one of the kids in the program, we want to thank you so much. It's imperative that we continue to hear these stories, even as an adult. It doesn't leave you, and especially for our young people who are here. I know I'm not going to say who. I have a friend who is here tonight, and she's they're in 8th grade, and their class just returned from Prague, and they went to Terezin, and this is kids, non-Jewish kids, who went to just recently to see the stories and see the actual places, Theresienstadt and the Jewish synagogues, the Spanish synagogue and the Jewish, the Altneu synagogue in Prague. So I'm really glad that my friends, my neighbors came tonight as well to hear your story. And it doesn't end here. Their stories live through us, and we have a responsibility. And as Elie Wiesel said in the tag as we advertised tonight, whoever listens to a witness becomes a witness. And the words never again mean what they mean. Thank you for coming tonight.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay.
Feel free to pick up a candle if you'd like.
What about it?
As well. And the books in the back. Make sure to, the books are ready for purchase in the back of the room with Selma.
Your hair. Real.